Hello and welcome to today's episode, which is all about me getting the idea of vegan chicken Kiev out of my head and onto my dinner plate. I made some herb stuffed tofu a few weeks ago, and that gave me the idea of what else can I stuff inside this, and thought at the time, ooh, maybe like a Kiev kind of thing would be really nice. So that's what I'm going to do today because it's been pecking at me for weeks. Just in case you haven't come across it before, the chicken Kiev is typically a chicken breast that's been sliced open and then stuffed with garlic butter and then breadcrumbs on the outside, and it's deep fried. So you get the nice kind of juicy garlic buttery tenderness inside and then a really nice crisp coating on the top. It'll be a very similar process to the herb stuffed tofu, but hopefully I'll frame this one a little bit better so you can see what I'm doing. I've pressed the tofu already, so I've just sliced it down into thick slabs, put it between two absorbent cloths and then put weight on top. I'm making use of some very heavy cookbooks, and then the tofu is kind of between the black and white cloth and the tray. I also thought I'd show you how to make some Hasselback potatoes. I think what I'm going to do is get the potatoes into the air fryer because then they can cook while I'm prepping the tofu, and then I can always put them back in for a couple of minutes just to crisp up again. My mum very kindly got me a new chopping board for Christmas, which is absolutely stunning. Solid block of British oak. I've already prepped most of the potatoes. All we're doing is cutting lots of little slices in there, and then they go kind of nice and crispy. So it also means they cook a lot faster as well. If you've got a steady enough hand, just slice it, like that. But because we need to keep the bottom intact, I rest it on a spoon, and then the edges of the spoon stops you going all the way to the bottom. Don't do it too hard because you'll start taking chunks out of your knife, and that leaves you with lots of little cuts. What I'd also suggest, if you've got any parts that go inwards, they're concave, just flip it around and try and find a convex surface for your bottom, because if you cut down through that, you're going to go straight through the bottom there. And then what you can do is just spin the potato around if you need to, just to make it a bit easier. I'm preheating the air fryer at 170. I don't know if I've done Hasselbacks in the air fryer before, so this temperature is a bit of guesswork. You can do them in the oven as well, not a problem at all. That technique with the slicing also works on like a full-size potato as well, and you can then start tucking things in the slices. So you can do cheese, sliced garlic, bay leaves, all that kind of thing, and just make it a really nice. You could do slices of vegan bacon, that kind of thing. I'm just going to coat the outside of the potatoes with some olive oil and salt just to get them nice and crispy and tasty on the outside. Drizzle of extra virgin olive oil. You can use any oil at all, that's fine. And I have sprayed sunflower oil inside the air fryer as it was preheating. So I'll just give them a stir with just the oil, get everything coated, and then I'll put the salt on. Some salt. Feel free to put some chopped rosemary or thyme, that kind of thing on the outside. If you're roasting potatoes though, the herbs I'd stay away from the finer herbs, so things like parsley, marjoram, coriander, anything soft, because they're just going to burn before the potatoes cooked. Air fryer's all preheated. Excuse the state of it. I'm trying to get it as dirty as I can so then I can do a deep cleaning video for you. So I'm just going to pop the potatoes in, and obviously you want them cut side up if you can. So this could potentially be a really good video for you if you're brand new to air frying, if somebody got you one for Christmas. So I'm going to set mine at 170. We'll do it for 8 minutes to start, and then I'll come and check how much colour they've got on there. Onto the kind of chicken part of the chicken Kiev. So this is my slices of tofu, and I've cut them into inch-ish thick slabs. You can do them a bit thinner, but it just gets a bit fiddly when you cut them in the middle. It can crack a bit more. This is a block of tofu that I'd had in the freezer. Freezing tofu forces more of the water out of it, so it becomes denser and chewier, more kind of meaty in texture, but it also does make it a bit more fragile. You can see all these air holes that are in there. This was almost completely smooth before putting it in the freezer. But yeah, so that's what freezing does. That will make it more crumbly and a bit harder to handle, but it will make it work. When I did the herb stuffed tofu, that one was also frozen, so I can't tell you what it would be like if it wasn't frozen, but by all means give it a try. As long as you've got an extra firm tofu, you'll be fine. I've already made up the garlic and herb butter. I did the garlic butter in the exact same way that I did for the tempeh top mushroom. I'm going to swap that footage in for you. It's just vegan butter, and then mash in some fresh garlic, and then in this one I did fresh thyme and some dried marjoram, but you can put anything you want in there. That's just what I had to hand. I didn't have any fresh parsley or anything. Potatoes have had about 7.5 minutes, so let's have a quick peek on those before I start with the tofu. They're going quite good. I think I'm going to drop that to 160 because I can just see in a couple of places, like there, they're just going a bit brown. I don't want them to burn on the outside before the inside's cooked. We're going to make a pocket about that kind of size, and that'll leave enough at the edges to kind of hold its shape. So I've got the knife in, and then I'm just going to very gently pull it across, using a little bit of a kind of rocking motion. So then that's given a little bit of a pocket there, but you can see how kind of delicate that is there. You can see it tearing. It's probably easier to put it down flat and then do it that way. I definitely won't use all of this butter, but I thought, you know, do more than I need, and then I've got plenty for a bit of garlic bread if I want it. I think I'm going to square the end off a little bit and then very gently slide that in. Yeah, the tofu is very, very brittle after the freezing, but it'll hopefully be okay. Just kind of giving it some support as I slide that in, just to reduce the amount of fracturing. Have a quick check on the potatoes, see how they're doing. So they're getting there, but the middles are, I wouldn't say they're very raw, but they are uncooked still. So I think another 10 minutes at 160. I'm going to use some plant-based chicken stock powder on the outside of these, just to give it that kind of chickeny flavour. Not a crucial step, you could just put a bit of salt on there if you want. But yeah, I fancy some of this. So I'm just going to dust a little bit on. So I've put some of the stock powder in a little dish. I'm going to try using this silicone brush, see if that picks any up. Yeah, which it kind of does. And then I'll kind of pat it on there. And because the tofu is a little bit wet, I'm hoping that the stock powder is going to sit on there and sink into it a little bit. I used a similar technique when I did the tofu pork, which was a kind of accidental discovery that I did a while back. I'll stick the link to that in the description. If you haven't got a silicone brush, just pat it on with your fingers, it's fine. Hopefully you'll be able to see this. It's going a little bit shiny. That's a sign that the moisture in the tofu is kind of bonding with the stock powder. So flip them over and do it again. The reason for putting the powder in a separate dish, I just don't want to cross-contaminate the jar of stock, because if I'm going in and out, I'm going to start transferring bits of crud into there. Check the spuds, they've had another 10. Oh, yes, they're looking delicious and golden. Knife is sliding in fairly well. So I'm doing another 10 minutes at 150, just because they're getting quite brown. For the crumb coating, I'm going to use some panko, which is Japanese for breadcrumbs. So if you hear people saying panko breadcrumbs, it's a bit like saying ATM machine. I think sometimes the panko are made with rice flour as well, but this one's just wheat. I'm not sure what they do to it to make them so light, because it's much lighter than a typical kind of breadcrumb that you buy in the shops. But it's really crunchy, very light, very, very pleasant. We'll do like an egg wash on the tofu and then dunk them in the panko. So I'm going to set up 2 plates here, ready to go. I've got the remainder of a bottle of scrambled eggs, vegan scrambled egg substitute. Be the same, I guess, as like a Just Egg in the States. I haven't tried this before, so I've no idea if this is going to work as an egg wash, but this is how we find out. I'll link to the other Chicken Kiev that I did a couple of years ago. I'll pop that down in the description for you. And I made like a chia seed egg. You just want ground chia seeds or flax seeds, that kind of thing, and a bit of oat milk. And just mix that until it becomes snotty. And you can use that to do your egg wash as well. So I've got a little dish here, so I'm just going to pour panko into the bottom. So there's the panko. So it's kind of, it's little flakes, a bit like a rice cake. It's that kind of texture, very delicate. So there's maybe 1/4 of a bottle there. What I'd planned on doing is making French toast with it. So anything that's left over, I'll just bang it back in the bottle and eat that tomorrow for breakfast. So to get that out, I'm going to make it a bit thinner with some oat milk. What I tend to do is just do a small amount, maybe a tablespoon, give it a good shake, pour it out, and then put more milk in, and then that gets the last bits of it out. Pour the second lot in. If your bottle's not at the end of its life, then just pour it into the dish and add the oat milk that way. I think this is going to be a good texture for an egg wash. Can't see why it wouldn't be. I wonder if you could use like a savoury protein shake. I've seen some other companies, like in the UK there's one called Huel. They've done a savoury one. That might work. Worth a shot, I suppose. You just want anything that's kind of gloopy and a bit sticky. Let's check the potatoes. Yeah, I think they're going to be good to go. They're still a little bit firm in places, but I am going to reheat them. Just put the air fryer back on with some oil in there, just so it gets nice and greasy for the chicken Kievs. Onto the crumbing. So I've got a tray set up with the tofu on it, and I've got my egg wash at the front, crumbs at the back, and then a plate to put them on. Ideally, you want to use one hand for your egg wash and one hand for the crumbing, otherwise it gets very messy. Pop it in and kind of sploosh it around a bit, shake off the excess, and then into the crumb. And then sprinkle the crumb over. I'm going to pick it up a little bit, make sure everything's coated. Just for the sake of knowing for the future, I will double dip the first one because that's the littlest one. Tuck the double dipped one sort of front left. Now I've got a suspicion all of that garlic butter is just going to flood out. I'm going to pop in some little supports that I've just made out of tin foil. Don't know if that's going to have any effect, but just to lift the front end up. Slide those into the air fryer. I think this is the first time doing anything crumbed that I've made myself rather than a shop bought thing. So I'm not sure what temperature to do them on. I'm going to do them at 190 for 5 minutes, and then I'll have a look and see how much colour's on there. And I'll see you back here when everything's cooked. Time for vegan chicken and potatoes. I dropped the air fryer down to 170 because it started going very dark in places on the crust. And I thought better to go a bit lower in temperature rather than have burned bits in amongst the golden. I also forgot to spray the outside with oil for the first 5 minutes. So I think that having oil on there would have made it colour a bit faster as well. Judging by the potent smell of garlic, I've got a feeling all of the garlic butter's leaked out. I think partly it's leaked out through some of those cracks that formed through the freezing. So perhaps it might be worth doing it with unfrozen tofu to get more of a seal in there. Worth a go. But it's still going to leave traces in there. Not a problem. Let's cut this sucker open. Going with a serrated knife just to make it a little bit easier. It certainly sounds super crunchy, which is a good sign. So you can see kind of garlic and herbs left behind in the cavity, so that's fine. It's just not going to flood out, I guess. So it sounds super crunchy. This is the double coated one. Let's have a go. Oh, that's cheeky. The garlic butter's doing a lot of heavy lifting in there. It's giving tons of flavour because tofu doesn't have much flavour on its own. But yeah, that's very pleasant. I want to try and show you the kind of density of the tofu. It's got a very firm texture, which is really nice in your back teeth. I'd initially planned on putting the stock powder inside the pocket as well, just so then it was getting flavour from kind of both sides so it would sink in deeper. But because of how brittle it was, I just didn't want to mess around with it too much. The other kind of stuffed tofu idea I've had is a cordon bleu, which is typically ham and cheese. In my freezer, I've got a big bag of spawn left over from the last time I made wash the flour seitan. It's all of the starch that gets washed out of the bag of flour. And I'd been thinking I'd want to try making like a prosciutto, parma ham, bresaola kind of thing. You know, like the Italian cured meats that are very thinly shaved and almost see-through a little bit. I'm thinking some spawn, flavourings, maybe a bit of vital wheat gluten, and then cook it and then maybe cure it in the fridge, something like that. And I think if that works, slices of that with some smoked vegan cheese stuffed inside, I think that would be stunning. I'll stick the link to that in the description if and when I get around to it. So the potatoes, it's a bit warm, they've come up really good. They just got a fantastic flavour. And I think it was maybe 20 minutes in the air fryer, something like that. You could potentially batch cook something like that, especially if you've got the deep fat fryer. So cook everything off till it's golden, let it cool down and then freeze it. And then either cook from frozen, maybe defrost it. Not sure. Again, if I do it at any point, I'll update the pinned comment. I reckon you could probably do that with some boursin. You get some vegan boursin, you know, the soft cheese that's got garlic and herbs in it. I think that would be incredible stuffed inside. Yeah, so I think non-frozen tofu, boursin, or do the garlic butter as well. And then make sure you just put lots of oil on top of the tofu when it goes in the air fryer. Just then you get a more even golden colour. I think that'll be spot on. Hit subscribe and tap the bell icon for more plant-based pocket ideas that will make you go, and then head over to this one.